weather powder. Good evening. Welcome to the Milton, Massachusetts Warrant Committee meeting. It is March 23rd, 2026. Karen, can you do a roll call to call us to order?
We have Jay Funling, Macy Lee, Elaine Craighead is on Zoom, Lorraine D is here, Larry Johnson, Brian McGuire. On Zoom we have Lee Michael McLean, Ron Sia, and here we have Nicholas Tangney and Cecile Yang. You have a quorum.
Okay, great. So the agenda for tonight it'll be a full meeting. We'll first talk about the sign bylaw, which we had previously discussed. We'll get updates on that. We have Liz Manning, the planning director, and Meredith Hall, the planning board chair, to assist us with any questions. We'll discuss it and I assume vote on it. After that, we're gonna have Nick Milano present an overview of the town budget. I know we've all taken a look at our own individual pieces. Nick's gonna tell us where we stand overall. And then we can start voting on things regarding the budget. I think the next thing after Nick's presentation, we'll turn to Lorraine, who's our representative on the capital committee, get her to present where things stand with the capital budget. Presumably vote on that. A couple of things I'd like to be sure to vote on tonight, the school's budget, which we discussed at length at our last meeting, and the stabilization funds, because that does have a little bit of question about what's the best place to put some money. I don't think it'll be too heated, but at least there's some questions for us to answer. Once we get done with that, we'll be at the point where sort of turn to the committee, see if everybody's experts on their individual parts of the budget. Assuming nobody has anything to say or comment on their parts of the budget, we'll start going down articles. Now, depending on the time of night, we might go through a bunch of articles. We might go through all the articles tonight. Whatever we don't get through tonight, depending on how late we want to stay. Thursday, I booked an in-person only meeting. The reason I booked an in-person only meeting is because if we've got 20 votes to do and we're in person, we can do voice votes, fast. So we'll get as far as we can or feel like tonight and then finish it up on Thursday. I don't want to rush anything. If there's an outstanding item that I didn't just mention, if somebody was on the head of the whatever budget and they have issues to raise, don't let me rush you. We can raise them. We've got a meeting scheduled for Thursday. We can ask questions if needed. I don't want to rush, but here we are. So, all that being said, let's talk about the sign bylaw. And Ms. Hall and Ms. Manning join us at the table.
Sure.
And Larry, do you want to take the lead? Ms. Manning?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really, you summarize, you took my slides and you summarized the changes within the slides, so
Yeah, sure,
no
absolutely.
point in me
Do you want me
restating what
to
you wrote.
Share the slides?
I'm not prepared to share them. I can though if I sign into the webinar.
No, I'm prepared to share them if you
Oh,
want me to.
absolutely, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
When I said prepared, I'll give you a second, but don't let me stop you.
Okay. Did you want to walk through the changes in the language where I had summarized the, sort of page by page, or did you just want to focus on the slides? I mean, we could jump right there if that's quicker.
I'm following your lead.
Okay. So, and I've got some hard copies here of the slide presentation, if that would be useful for anybody. My hands on it. Now I'm scrambling a little bit, sorry. Oh, they're the other right there.
I've requested sharing.
Anybody need a hard copy, or has everyone got them sort of?
Take one too. So much trouble looking.
So there was a lot of discussion about temporary signs at the last meeting, so the third slide in the presentation, there were no changes to the first slide. The third slide in the presentation talks about the temporary sidewalk signs and the review process there. So what I had done was I followed the same format as the previous slide, which kind of gives you that sort of flow chart for the sign review process and how this works. And so essentially, the sidewalk, the only temporary sign that is gonna follow this new flow chart are the temporary sidewalk signs for businesses. The language for that is contained in section 12.I, and it's an application to the building commissioner. They review the application to ensure that it meets all of the requirements, and then the DPW is gonna, a change there as well is to have the DPW make the decision to, that it's appropriately in the public right of way and that there aren't any issues with clearance and et cetera. Assuming the building commissioner and the DPW are both in agreement that the sidewalk sign is acceptable, then it just moves to an approval, and that's the end of the process. If the building commissioner, does not certify that it's a complete application, or the DPW has some issues with the sign being in the public right of way, then they can communicate that to the applicant. The applicant can go back and sort of, reconvene and, try to make some adjustments, and then, submit it back to the building commissioner, and with the hopes that they can, address the issue, and then that becomes an approved sign as well. If the applicant disagrees with the building commissioner's decision for any reason, then they can make that appeal to the Board of Appeals. And it would follow the same process as any type of appeal to the Board of Appeals. So hopefully that's a pretty, straightforward, depiction of how that would work for businesses that wanted to do a sidewalk sign.
Can I ask
Yes.
two related questions? One, it might be obvious, but why the DPW? And the second question is, do you check
So, excellent question. I had conversations with the town administrator, I had conversations with the building commissioner. I don't know that I actually was able to close the loop with the DPW commissioner on this particular item. I think the thinking was that they would be the ones that would be the most closest to understanding if there were concerns about clearances and conditions, and if there was perhaps a sidewalk was being repaired or something during a time period, that they would be the department that would have the best handle on that, on those conditions, like out in the business districts.
Mr. Milano, sorry to put you on the spot. Talking about this, I asked if she had discussed with the DPW if they're okay with being a part of this process. She said not directly. Did you either discuss with the DPW, or through your extensive work with the DPW, does your gut tell you they're okay with being a part of this process?
No, I think where we had left it was they are generally involved already on occupancies of the right of way. So they already have a permit process. If you want to occupy the right of way to store something, to do work, et cetera. So it felt like a natural additional mission scope increase. But I don't know that Liz followed up, and I didn't either. So in terms of closing the loop, not fully closed, but I think the connection was occupancies of the right of way already kind of flow through the engineering department as is. And this is another occupancy of the right of way.
And it was also one of the only places where there was sort of a role in the zoning bylaw to be sort of, checking in with the town administrator. So we thought that it would, to make things really, really clean and sort of take that out of that wheelhouse of the select board and the town administrator, and keep it nice and tight with the building commissioner and the DPW.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that.
The existing process for having a sidewalk sign approved has a role for the town administrator's office. So we really wanted to keep it crystal clear that this new process going forward was going to be solely the building commissioner and the DPW, sort of like taking that piece off of their plate and keeping it nice and clean.
And this is probably an obvious question too, but this applies to anything that, like any A-frame signs that might go in the intersection in front of the Boy Scouts or Porch Fest or whatever, Center, anything like that. It's the same process for those as well.
So no, it's not. Yeah, it's not actually.
Really businesses.
Yeah, so those signs follow, I actually made a copy of this, I'd be happy to pass it around. It's called Rules and Regulations for Nonprofit Event Signage and Banner Display. So this is a permit from the Board of Selectmen. These are the sidewalk signs and the lawn signs and the banners and what have you. They follow a very specific process. It's not within the zoning. It's a separate process through the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Is it because those are temporary and the vision of these are more permanent signs?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. These are limited, I think, to 3 weeks and have to be removed within a really certain period of time, after the approval lapses. These signs are also temporary because they're only allowed for certain times of the year and certain periods of time. So, but this has its own separate distinct process, and there's language in here that I think that's very clear about the types of signs that have to get this permit from the select board are very expressly exempted in the bylaw language.
And this application clearly determines where the sites are, where the locations that the signs can be put, so.
Yep.
Certain intersections, locations.
Yeah, I found that here. Exception, great.
Moving on? Okay, so on the next page, no changes on this slide. The next slide, we've just got some new language around temporary signs. So temporary signs allowed for 45 days, and like I just mentioned, exhaustive, I think, list of exempted signs. So I think you can find just about every type of sign in that list of exemptions. If there's concerns about, we addressed the question about, special festivals. We addressed, the questions around the A-frames for the nonprofit, types of situations. Like we added some language to make sure that those types of uses that had been brought up at the last meeting were expressly exempted. And so that's the change there. And then the temporary sale signs, which apply just to the business districts, just to businesses, I should say, in the business districts. The planning board had a long conversation about wanting to make that more, to expand the timeframes for that to 180 days. I think the existing language was 90 days. And also to allow exterior signs as well, because there was talk about, folks wanting to say, oh, we've got, pumpkins for sale or native corn, or that sort of kept coming up. And, or if some of the restaurants have special types of, promotions or what have you, that they, they really wanted to make sure that the brick and mortars were really thought about and taken care of. And those signs do not count to the total sign area. And then
Can I ask
oh, yeah.
question? Temporary signs like that, sales signs, do they have to apply, for that?
Yes,
And so if they have to apply for corn one, if it's like September, and a pumpkin one for October, like that's two separate, does it change it? You can't just say one sales sign?
that's a good question. I'd have to kind of I kind of have to look at that a little bit more carefully. Does that, we talked about that at all?
It has been
No.
it has been that it is per sign, and they can vary, they could overlap in different times, it could be seasonal corn, and then they might have something else that might
So it's just the
overlap.
space, it's the space?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
That
sense
was-
to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, let's see. That's pretty much it. And then I know you guys had suggested it would be nice to sort of see some of these images of different types of signs. So I went ahead and I just sort of, pulled together some different representative images, point of purchase display, what an awning sign will look like now, a blade projecting sign. Oh, yes.
One purchase sale inside a store,
Yes.
like a display like that would
Yes.
require compliance with this?
No, those are exempted. So there was some
Exempted,
questions about it because it came up a lot with the planning board because if a display like that was sort of like right in the window,
Okay,
it could kind of double, you know, sort of as signage.
okay.
So, but those are expressly exempted. And again, it's in recognition of, you know, the brick and mortars like needing to do what they can to sell
Yeah,
their
okay.
goods.
Thank you.
And on, just on that note, to follow up, one of the questions was the real estate signs. And so what, we had a discussion about that and whether we needed to have language, but technically, the real estate signs that you see are not affixed to the window. So that's where the difference between a sign and a display is not affixed to a window. So technically, what the realtor's offices have are displays. They're separately free hanging. Yes, they're in front of the window, but they are technically a display of
And those aren't.
sales. And those are exempt.
And again, a
Display
liquor
any-
store that has Miller Lite inside the window.
If it's affixed to the window, and that's where, just to keep it, if it's stuck onto a window, attached to a window, affixed, it is a sign. If it is not, if it is set back behind the window, it is a display. That's, the difference is, it's affixed to the window.
I mean, it's a loophole, but what are you gonna do, you know, you gotta draw a line somewhere, right?
Right. So I think that's the simplest way to explain, yeah,
Which is not fine.
the difference.
Thank you.
So those were pretty much the summary of the changes that were made in the language. I don't know, are there more questions or, you know, we had some comments back from town council on some of the questions about the political signage and sort of how you can, you know, how you can and can't regulate that in a storefront window. I feel pretty comfortable, we've got some nice guidance on that. I don't know if there's anything else.
I know more about signs than ever.
Well, it is, a lot of people don't know we have a sign review committee, which has been doing a wonderful job, so
Yeah.
hopefully this will help the sign review committee, will help the building department, the planning staff, and really make it, for an applicant, just everything, just very, you know, more clear.
Yeah. And imagine the businesses know we have a sign review committee, the businesses in town.
So I'd like to be 100% clear what we're voting on. So the language that is, there's a Word document dated titled 3/23 sign bylaw revised. Ms. Manning, are you saying that's the current version?
Just pull up my copy.
This was sent to the whole warrant committee today at 2 o'clock, if not.
Yes, 3/19. 3/19/26, yep.
The one I have is titled 3/23 sign bylaw revised.
Jay, that was my title for the
Oh.
meeting document file for
Oh,
tonight.
thank you.
So, but it is what she said today.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
I will share it on the screen. I will share it, I promise. Speak now if you did not receive the document and or otherwise don't know what we might be voting on tonight.
This is the one you sent at 2 o'clock today, right? Or somebody, Karen sent it?
Yes. I understand if people want some time to look at this and we take it up on Thursday. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion. Well, yeah, I will say I'll entertain a motion.
Can I just ask one thing? Isn't there a public forum, like a public review of this at some point
We have a public forum on Thursday.
on Thursday? I mean, if we voted for this now and then they made changes during the public, we'd have to vote on it again, I guess, right?
True.
Yeah.
True. So the public forum will be you talking to the public, and then it's a possibility that you'll make changes?
It's unlikely at this point because it's really been vetted quite well. There may be questions about this that we'll be able to answer, and that's really what it's just to informing the public of what's happening, what we've been, letting you all know. Certainly if there was anything significant,
Mhm.
We would discuss it and would, come to you right away with that. But I don't see really, because there's been so much input with the building commissioner, the staff,
I'm just,
Yeah.
Elaine, I see your hand up. Larry, I'll
we
say,
do have to have a public.
that doesn't worry me a whole lot, because we should probably have a meeting on the books for next Monday, a just in case meeting.
Yeah, right.
So that doesn't worry me too
Okay,
much.
all right, that sounds good.
Elaine?
I was able to look at this, but not in any great detail, because I just received it today. And I'm wondering if there are other people that are sort of in the same situation.
Did it get sent on Friday? Because it's the same one as Friday.
It probably got sent to me on Friday. I don't know when or if I forwarded
And
it
Karen.
along.
Yeah.
Because it's the same document, I just wanted for people, if they saw it, to read it over the weekend. I thought you had requested it on Friday, so that, and I think you sent it Thursday.
I'm sure I did, but that
Actually,
doesn't
was
mean I
on
did it
Friday.
right.
You
Thursday.
sent
It's
it
this,
on the
it hasn't
20th, Jen.
changed. That is the
good,
same.
good for me.
It's the same as what you sent on.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, I did send it to the team on the 20th. That's not to invalidate someone's objection if they still feel like. And, another way of looking at it is the reason we have experts on the warrant committee this year is so that not all 15 members have to read the 10-page document. You can, I'm not trying to stop anyone. But that was one of the ideas.
I mean, I've read it, so I'm fine with voting on it today, but, I might be the only one. There's also, the discussion we had last time about the 20% coverage, and Andrew had some issues with that, and I don't know if anyone else did it, but if nobody else has any concerns about that, then I think we can just let it go, and possibly it'll come up during town meeting as an amendment or something like that. And
Yeah, I mean, I know Andrew's not here to speak for himself. My interpretation of what Andrew was saying, I mean, the current law says 20%, the new law says 10%. Andrew didn't like either of those.
Right,
And I feel like, let's focus most on what the law is changing,
Yeah.
not do we rip out the whole thing, so.
that's kind of the way I see it too,
And the planning board did discuss that also and brought that back. And it was really because it was the recommendation of the chair of the sign review committee, who felt very strongly that 20% was way too much, that he said it was his recommendation for 10%, so that's why we decided to
Yeah.
continue with the 10%, what John Zikowitz had recommended. As an expert, because we also defer to you all as the experts on this.
Well, how about this? I will entertain a motion if someone wants to make one. And as always, we have a motion, we have a second, we have discussion. And if during that discussion, people say, guys, let's really not do this now. Remember, a motion failing doesn't mean we recommend against it. A motion failing means we don't take action on this tonight. So that might be one way to do it.
Also make a motion to vote on it tonight? Okay, I'll make a motion that we vote on this tonight, that we vote to approve this article tonight.
Second. Okay, great. We have a motion, we have a second. Is there discussion on this?
Well, I like the PowerPoint, by the way, thought it helped a lot. The,
Yeah.
Organizational chart.
Yeah, that was Larry and Liz.
I liked it.
Larry was
It
like.
is, it's very helpful,
Good job.
yeah.
The flow charts are great.
I have something I'd like to say. I would really, really like it if you would close the loop with DPW. I would suggest before your open hearing on Thursday night.
Yep.
I'll just sleep better.
Yep.
And then, we may be meeting Thursday night, we may have we'll probably have a meeting on the books for Monday, whether we need it or not, just in case. But I would sleep better if you close that loop.
Absolutely.
We have a motion, we have a second. I see no more discussion. Karen, can you do a roll call vote?
Macy,
Yes.
Elaine,
Oh,
Jamesley. Jamesley,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Cecile,
Yes.
Jay.
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you to our guests for all your
Thank you
hard
all
work.
for your time and,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's good. Appreciate it.
Okay. I'd like to invite Mr. Milano and Ms. Dexter. You can have the guest seat, you can have my seat, you can have wherever you're most comfortable.
Ronnie has no idea what he's
Better run it.
You better share something quick, Jay.
Leave Ron hanging on the screen.
I've put on some weight over the winter, okay?
So while Mr. Milano is getting ready, I realize we haven't had Mr. Milano, Ms. Dexter in as often as we had in previous warrant committee years, and that's my mistake for not inviting them as much. We did, each of us had our expertise, things that we looked into in the budget. Some people presented months ago about what they thought on the budget. Since then, Mr. Milano put together his level service budget. I did ask at one point, do people have concerns on their specialties? I haven't heard back. So, we will be hearing from Mr. Milano about the big picture of the budget. And then we'll be discussing, ready to be voting on individual budget items.
All right, well, thank you. Jay, I think you said you'd be ready for us at about 7:30 and you nailed that on the dot, so well done. Thanks for taking the time tonight. I'll, as Jay alluded, walk through where things stand with the budget presently. I'll identify a few places where there have been some kind of discussion and I've made my recommendations, which I'll walk through here. So I know I did come around previously to talk about revenue forecasts. I'll provide an update on what the revenue forecast looks like. As you can see here, I've just summarized kind of all the top line revenue. I won't go through them in too great detail, but if anybody has a question about them, please feel free to let us know. Property taxes assumes $1 million in new growth plus the max that we can increase under the Prop 2.5, which is 2.5% of the prior year tax levy. Local receipts are, again, building permit fees, motor vehicle excise taxes, interest income, other local fees that we assess, the trash fees that you use for your annual trash cart or if you buy stickers, all roll up into what we call local receipts. Local receipts has been a strong revenue source for us in recent years. We've increased our forecast pretty significantly from where we were to start this year at about $10.8 million, driven by what we see as continued strong revenue on particularly motor vehicle excise taxes, but also interest income, building permit fee revenue staying strong, although maybe not quite the outlier years that we've had in the past couple. State aid, the state aid figure that we are using is the state aid number that was set by the governor in her budget that was released in the third week of January. That is only the first step in the state budget process, but that's the number we're going to use. The House is going to release its budget in late April, so we generally stick with the governor's budget recommendation. I was at a Mass Municipal Association conference last week, not earlier this week. And one of the things that the Mass Municipal Association has been pushing on is having a broader conversation about Prop 2.5 more generally with stakeholders, but also more specifically pushing for the state to put more dollars into state aid. Their tagline right now is $351 million for 351 cities and towns, which would result in a significant increase in the state aid account for everybody. We don't necessarily expect that to happen, but I just want to share that advocacy continues even in what some are calling are some challenging financial years for the state budget. The operating budget stabilization fund is the new stabilization fund that was approved by this town meeting and voters last year. Right now, I'm recommending a withdrawal of about $777,000 out of that. Broadly, we're looking at about a 4% increase in revenue year over year. And I've shown down below that we are recommending usage of about $4 million of our $4.5 million in free cash, and I'll explain that more in a moment. So that's the overall revenue forecast for now. Obviously, property taxes drive the majority of what we take in, but we do have these other revenue categories that help out on a given year. I have a couple slides here and here that kind of talk, that are, say, adjustments. So I know when I had met with the Warrant Committee, one time we had a much more significant deficit in terms of what town and schools are trying to reach, and there were some changes since that kind of $2.6 million number was first released publicly. So some of these changes I just discussed briefly, but our baseline forecast had a more conservative estimate for state aid. We changed that with the governor's budget that comes out. That's typically what's going to happen on a year-to-year basis. Local receipts, again, we had a more conservative forecast. Once we got more information about how motor vehicle excise taxes were trending this year, we felt a lot more comfortable increasing that forecast for next year, and we'll do the same again in a year from now. Penalties and interest, again, as we're working to close out some kind of long outstanding tax bills, we feel confident that those will continue to be strong. We did dial back our anticipated increase for our building department revenue. Not because we're seeing a slowdown or anything, but what has been permitted in the last couple of years, if you've been driving around town, are a number of large projects. Those have substantial fee revenue associated with them. At this point, just about all of those large projects that are going to be built have been permitted by the department, so we've already captured that revenue. So the revenue moving forward is more likely going to revert back to the typical new construction on single-family, two-family homes, additions and renovations, rather than the large projects. The only large projects that have been approved by land use bodies in Milton that have not gotten their permits are 648, 652 Canton Ave, which is a large 40B project, 116 units. The memory care project has not received its building permit yet. That's on Highland. And then a smaller 40B at 16 Amore. All the other projects have all been permitted and are already well under construction. The operating budget stabilization fund, we had been carrying a usage of about $700,000, and we've increased that slightly and then dialed it back. But overall, we're looking at about $778,000 come out of the operating budget stabilization fund in fiscal 27 to support budgets. In terms of kind of key takeaways of the fiscal 27 budget in a big picture sense, so one of the biggest cost items is employee benefits, and particularly health insurance. We are forecasting and budgeting for an 8% premium increase on employees and on the town's contribution for health insurance. This follows a 14% premium increase in fiscal 26 that the employees in the town budget had to support. There's been a lot of headlines on health insurance and the costs going on there, so we're hopeful that we can hopefully hit lower numbers in future years, but that's 14 and 8 in back-to-back years is certainly significant. The budget meets our OPEB policy by we are appropriating about $1.6 million into our OPEB trust and about $1 million into the Milton retirement system over and above what's needed to have that system at full funding. Our policy states that $2.5 million are dedicated to these long-term liabilities, and that grows at 2.5% a year, so we've met that fully. We've met our new financial policies by appropriating $675,000 of free cash into the general stabilization fund, which will bring that balance to about $7.8 million, which will hit over 5% of the fiscal 27 budget, which is our metric. If you combine our other two stabilization funds, general stabilization, cap stabilization, and road stabilization, that balance is closer to $9.3 million, or 6% of the budget. I'll just note, I was looking back that at the end of fiscal 24, the general stabilization, end of fiscal 23, the general stabilization fund was at $5 million. So there's been a significant inputs into that fund to increase the town's overall financial foundation, which is not easy to do, and we've been fortunate to have high free cash numbers in recent years, but I just wanted to make sure folks are aware of the progress that we've made on that. We've also set aside additional funds in future years by appropriating or recommending $1 million appropriation into free cash, into the operating budget stabilization from free cash. So the way that works is we had $2 million from free cash last year, $700,000 on the override. That $700,000 has been voted by the select board to increase by 2.5% for next tax year, so that would be another $717,000 plus the $1 million. So additional money keeps going into that operating budget stabilization fund to support operating budget in future fiscal years. The budget is supporting town and school capital needs through $1.216 million in free cash, paying for capital for pay-as-you-go items, things that will pay directly. There's also about $4 million in debt service supported capital projects that are covered by the fiscal 27 debt service budget. We're increasing our overall reserves by recommending an appropriation of $500,000 of free cash into the sped stabilization fund, which will provide additional reserve funds for the schools and unanticipated expenses. The budget does maintain town departmental budgets at level service. There is one adjustment to that, which is the budget includes adding a position at the police department for the technical support coordinator. If you were on the Warrant committee last year, you heard Chief King talk about it. I know, I'm sure Macy has talked about it again this year. So that's the one kind of add, that's a potential recurring expense, assuming we fill that position and maintain it. Then we do propose several one-time projects that are not recurring costs, but I'll explain those more in a minute. So that's kind of the high level. Obviously, I didn't go department by department, happy to answer questions, but that's some of the key takeaways that I see in this budget from both a town-wide perspective, but also a town department specific perspective. So what does that mean in terms of the numbers? So here you can see our budget has increased about 4% over the prior year. When you take that all in, I've shown here what the percent increases are when we generally break it out into these four categories: Milton Schools, Blue Hills Regional, Voc Tech. The shared budgets are capital, employee benefits, debt service, the OPEB trust, all of those kind of expenses that cover employees both on the town side and the school side, as well as town and school expenses. The consolidated facilities department, which is a shared department, we tag under the shared category, and then town departments. As you can see just from this initial chart, obviously town departments are shooting up a little bit higher than schools. That's largely due to non-recurring one-time items that you can, I'll discuss more in a moment, but the one recurring expense is police. If you take out the one-time costs, we're looking at about a 4% increase year over year on town departments compared to a school department increase of about 3.76%. And then again, just as I had mentioned earlier, some of the changes that took us away from that large, significant deficit earlier in the year. We had made some reductions on our debt service forecast by reassessing how we're planning to borrow, particularly our more expensive, longer duration projects. So that was more of a shift of costs out of 27 into 28. So it's a cost was still experienced, just not necessarily in fiscal 27. Health insurance, working with the school department, we have allocated some costs for health insurance to other funds if those funds support employees 100%. And the big example here is that there are a number of employees that are paid out of the school's food service budget. Now their employee salaries plus their health insurance benefits will be paid out of that fund rather than being borne by the taxpayers. We've identified one position as well on the town side that will pull out and charge outside of the shared health insurance budget. We also had savings due to the reduction. We had been carrying a 10% premium increase, so we were able to reduce that down to 8%, which triggered some savings. Then lastly, our general insurance line, which is our property general liability, automotive liability insurance, workers' comp, public officials, police officers' liability insurance. We've experienced a significant reduction in expenses there. We've already received our renewal for fiscal 27, and it's much lower than anticipated, largely due to much better improved experience on workers' comp, which is resulting in significant savings. So that's just a testimony of the good work of HR departments and also just employees who, if they are experiencing injuries, getting back to work. And Maya, which is our insurer, is a branch of the Mass Municipal Association, and being aware of the challenges cities and towns are facing, they have changed some of their underwriting. So we had about a $40,000 savings just from a statewide change that they're doing to all of their member communities. So one of the benefits of procuring our insurance through them. So we're realigning that budget to kind of reset it so that we have been over budget in that line in the past year. This will significant reduction will get us kind of more back in line and get back to where it should be rather than the inflated budget it's been under. And then, as I had mentioned, kind of adds into the budget. So I've identified here what those are. Recurring, as I mentioned, the police department position, budgeted for a $90,000 increase for that position. We have budgeted health insurance, an increase for that potential employees' benefits, which are obviously unknown. We've budgeted thinking a full family plan, the full town cost for a single family plan there. And then a number of one-time costs. So in the DPW budget, we've increased the traffic engineering services line by $120,000 as we're working on a scope with a traffic engineering consultant to come in and do a lot of community engagement and write a plan and a policy around traffic calming town-wide with proposed interventions and proposed projects to come out of that. It's one of the number one issues that we hear a lot about and are trying to take a data-driven kind of research-based approach on that issue, and this plan will go a long way to enabling us to put that into place. Another one-time cost is an economic development plan. We had some grant funding for, lost the grant funding, are now looking to backfill that with tax dollars, or town dollars rather. So we're proposing that $50,000 be split between the select board and planning board for a joint project on an economic development plan. From free cash, we're proposing additional appropriation to the building department for $50,000 for additional hours for inspectors. We have a number of part-time inspectors. With all the large projects going on, that department's feeling a lot of pressure. We may look to appropriate this again in fiscal '28 while all these projects are ongoing, then kind of reassess what our proper level of staffing will be. But that department is feeling a lot of pressure from all of these projects kind of hitting all at once. And then lastly, the planning board has been trying to do work on a zoning bylaw recodification. So just like a thorough review of the zoning bylaw, cleaning it up, making it more accessible to property owners, and identifying potential changes. And we're proposing to do that work with our new town council, KP Law. So that appropriation would fund that project. So these are the kind of quote unquote adds to the budget that are beyond what we would consider level service. And just as I mentioned, all the town departments have submitted level service budgets. We're proposing funding all of those. One of the kind of largest changes within that level service category is we did recommend increasing the appropriation to DPW for snow and ice. That snow and ice budget has been at $160,000 for as long as anybody can really remember. So we've proposed increasing that to $250,000. We really spend in a light winter closer to $500,000. In this winter, we're upwards of $1.5 million in overspend of that line item. So this is just a small thing that we can do to hopefully have a little bit more wiggle room within the DPW budget. What that means is we know going into every year that we're working on a deficit because we're going to overspend that account. Largely, DPW has to absorb that within the rest of its budget. That just means fewer projects are done. Less money is available for other things because we're working kind of at a deficit from day one. This will help reduce that deficit a little bit. Otherwise, the departments are minimally changed, as most of you will have seen. The budget includes appropriations for our collective bargaining agreements and the collective bargaining set aside. We're now approaching the end of year one of the new contracts. However, we haven't reached agreement on any new contracts, so all the employees have been working under their prior contract that expired on June 30 of 25. So the budget includes a payment for retro payments to go back to July 1 of 25, as well as for years 1 and year 2 of any potential new contracts. So that's a large kind of outlier warrant article. It's just because we haven't been able to reach agreement with those unions, so we're budgeting for both year 1 and year 2 in that account. I've mentioned all of these proposed uses of free cash in passing. Here it is all on one page. We've already appropriated $60,000 for the special election that was held in November. And then going down the line, the $1.2 million to capital, $675 to general stabilization, $590, that's included in the collective bargaining wage set aside. This would be for retro payments back to July 1. That's budgeted in this year's budget. But if we turn the page into fiscal 27 and haven't paid those out, that money will go unspent. So it's either gonna be paid out in this budget or it'll be zero in this budget and paid out in the fiscal 27 budget. That's why we feel comfortable with using free cash for that appropriation. The school reserves, as I mentioned, there's been discussion about the right place for that. I've proposed the sped stabilization fund, which would require both select board and school committee approval before money can be taken out of it if appropriated by town meeting. The operating budget stabilization fund for $1 million, the building department planning board projects that I mentioned, and then one change that we made in our policies was to leave some free cash not appropriated. In our past, we had always left it appropriated. This way, in a more challenging financial year, we'll know kind of going into the next year that there's a little bit of money in a reserve that we could think about using if necessary against policy, but it just leaves a little cushion for the next fiscal year to not bring that appropriation down to zero. At the end of the fiscal year, free cash goes away, you have zero until the Department of Revenue tells you if you have any. This gives us a little bit of a starting balance on that. I think that was my overview of where I see kind of some of the big takeaways for the fiscal 27 budget. Obviously, I didn't go into a ton of detail department by department. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them on any and all of it.
On the snow removal, since we seem to have been so under budget for the last 2 years, why not try to do like an average of 5 years and put that in as a budget, like a more realistic number?
Yes, I mean, we could try to do that. It would just be so much money to go from like 160,000 to $500,000. So I think we're just hopeful that we can do a series of these increases over several years rather than doing all at once. So that would be our goal, is to build it up to closer to what a kind of a light winter would be. But we have a couple more years that we would want to kind of roll that out. In a perfect world, yes, we would go up, but just kind of knowing some of the pressures.
Anyways.
Correct. But in a year like this year, a year like last year, where there are budgets that have vacancies and turnover and savings, we can take that money to snow and ice. So it's a way of, we're able to move the money around at the end of the year, which helps. It'd be better to have a higher kind of baseline before we have to resort to that, but I just think it would be a significant ask to raise the snow and ice budget by $400,000, for example, in a single year, and I'm uncomfortable with trying to increase it slightly over the course of several
So
years.
what are you increasing it from?
From $160,000 to $250,000.
Ron, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Very helpful, Nick. I had a couple questions. I think the first one is maybe to build on the comment about the snow budget. I mean, I feel like this winter has been so much snow. Do we know what the cost could look like? Is it going to be astronomical, or is it going to be in line with prior years for salt and then snow removal?
No, we're well over budget. So last year we were about $800,000 in deficit. This year we're about $1.5 million in deficit. So certainly an outlier year if you look past the past 10 years. Between cost to our employees, cost to contractors, cost to just buy salt, and then cost to fix broken equipment and everything else. So we're able to attribute all of that to the snow and ice budget. So yeah, we're at about a $1.5 million deficit that we still need to erase. There are a few pathways to do so, starting with, as I just mentioned, taking money from other budgets and moving them into the DPW budget at year end, which we're starting to map out what that might look like, and then, if necessary, future appropriations in a future town meeting to address it as kind of the next step.
Okay, that makes sense. I had a couple other questions. One was a general question, and maybe we've talked this before, but with the MBTA's community issue that we went through, I know we had lost some grants and funding. Is anyone looking at whether or not there are things that we could still apply for, maybe we haven't been keeping an eye on, or anything that's retroactive? I assume there's nothing that we can go after that we haven't already looked at. Want to double check.
not really retroactive in trying to get the money quote unquote back. We did apply for last year and receive a MassWorks grant to look at infrastructure improvements in East Milton in the vicinity of the two projects at 440 Granite and Franklin and Bassett Street that are ongoing. So that's like a road and infrastructure design grant that we applied for and received that DPW is starting to get to work on now of several $100,000. The other big one that was taken away was the Seaport Economic Council grant for work on the seawall down at Milton Landing. We are in the final kind of stages of applying for a grant for that, of actually more money now, $280,000 to do that work. That grant will be submitted by the end of this week. And we just recently received an IT community compact grant for $130,000, I think, maybe $140,000 for a digitization of records in the building department, planning department, conservation commission, and elsewhere. These are all grant programs that we were not ineligible for while we were out of compliance with MBTA community. So as they become open and we're compliant, we've been sure to get applications in, and we've been successful. The other one I should mention is that it came up actually at last town meeting, or maybe 2 years ago, was we had been unsuccessful in applying for a community transit grant program to replace one of the buses at the COA. But year 4 was our year, and we've been awarded that grant. That should come out soon. You know, a 14-passenger bus will be supported by a state grant that will be signing paperwork on shortly. So we've been.
It's great news. I'm sure that the Council on Aging is very excited.
Yeah. So we've been, that is all Christine Stanton's doing there, but we've just been chasing what we can now that we're back eligible for all of these grant programs, and we've been pretty successful so far, and we'll continue to do that.
That's great. Very helpful. Other question I had, the 50,000 for the building department. Do you know by chance what those hours are? Are those hours related to the light trespass article that we voted on last year?
Thankfully not. No, this is really just additional hours to do inspections of projects under construction. So whether it's the 40B projects or it's your addition and renovation, we have a full-time building commissioner, a full-time local inspector, a full-time code enforcement officer, 2 part-time local inspectors, part-time electrical inspector, and then part-time plumbing and gas inspectors. So this would be additional money for those part-time inspectors to have additional hours to kind of hopefully catch up with the workload and keep permits and inspections moving.
Okay, great, thanks. I have this like recurring fear that the light trespass enforcement would drive up costs. It's just in the back of my mind all the time, like having building inspectors going out to people's houses at night, all over town. But hopefully that's an irrational fear that I'll have to get over.
That's not materialized yet, but I will keep you posted. And it sounds like I might have a volunteer.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Keeping on a theme, I'm also concerned about the snow and ice budget. You said we might find places where we didn't spend money in this year's budget, or that we might come back to a future town meeting. Can you say more about that?
Sure. There's really kind of 4 things at play right now. And for that, first of all, the Mass Emergency Management Association, MEMA, is submitting it as a disaster declaration to FEMA. So we have shared our costs of the February storm with FEMA. DPW Director Marina Fernandez had a meeting with FEMA last week to go through our costs, and it's really going to be focused on Norfolk County and Point South. So we're fortunate to be Norfolk County. So there is a possibility that we'll have disaster relief assistance through FEMA that will pay for a portion of our costs for that storm. So that's kind of bucket 1. The problem there is can be a lengthy process. So it might be some time before we figure that out, but that's one potential source of additional funding. Source 2 will be fiscal 26 budget appropriations, our current budget year. Places where we're on track to be under budget include, the select board budget. We've had a number of vacancies. A couple of other departments, including police and fire, have had vacancies. The DPW departments had vacancies, so they'll have savings in the general expense budget that can be moved to snow and ice. The reserve fund Right now, we're not tracking anything that we're anticipating to be needing the reserve fund. It's still early, but that's available. We have, as I mentioned earlier, the general insurance budget. We have savings there in this fiscal year. So we'll cobble together a bunch of transfers that will hopefully eat up a good portion of that. And then under Massachusetts law, we can leave this account in deficit at year end. So if we don't have enough within fiscal year appropriations, it can remain in deficit. And we have basically until we set the tax rate in the fall to make up for it. So that could be a subsequent town meeting vote. Or if our revenue forecasts improve, we could add it to the tax rate in the fall, just through the Board of Assessors. So there's multiple pathways that can get there. The key one being fiscal year 26 appropriations to chew up as much of that as we can. All of that means is we've had sky-high free cash last couple of years, but if we have very few departmental turnbacks, because all the departmental turnbacks of savings go to a budget account to be spent, that contributor to our free cash calculation will be much reduced. So it will certainly have an impact on our free cash for next year. You know, revenue forecasts have been strong throughout this fiscal year, so that's good. Just our expenditure savings that we've had in the last couple of years, we won't expect this year because we'll be putting all of those to use.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's one of my concerns is that it's gonna eat into free cash. And
Certainly.
not to jump around the agenda too much, but I think one thing we're gonna discuss tonight is school reserves. You know, your proposal is we put $500,000 into the special education account. We discussed with the schools last week about their reserve policy. Is this, I don't know if I'm asking you, Mr. Milano, or just asking the world, but is this something that maybe instead of putting the special education budget, we put in some form or fashion to either improve this free cash next year? Yeah, basically to improve the free cash next year. Do you have any thoughts about that?
If that were the goal, I would say you could either leave it unappropriated, as we already are, or some portion of it unappropriated, or it could go to like general stabilization. You know, we'd be in excess of our policy, so that would be available for appropriation and still meet our policy at a future town meeting. But those would be, if that was a concern or a goal, those would be two pathways by which to do that.
Can you explain the school health thing where you're gonna take, someone's gonna, you said it was not gonna affect the taxpayers? I didn't understand that.
Yeah, so there are fee and grant-driven funds, programs, such as Milton Community Schools and food service, that has outside revenue funds that come in. The school department uses those revenue sources to hire employees, and they pay their salaries out of those funds. So their salaries are over here being paid out of food service or community schools, but the general fund town budget is paying for those employees' health insurance. So our perspective is, if these are fee-based or grant-based programs, they should be bearing 100% of the cost to run them. So that is where it comes from, is to say, okay, if you have 10 employees in an account that generates fees, then those employees' benefits should also be covered by those fees. So that's the concept. That's not what we've been doing, but the schools have been willing partners, at least on the food service front, to do that to those employees. Community schools, they've talked about raising fees on community schools as it is, so they weren't comfortable yet with absorbing those additional employee benefits costs in fiscal 27, but it's something we're going to continue to talk about. On the town side, it was really the retirement, an employee at the Milton Retirement Board, which should have been borne by the retirement system, so we're just taking that out of the budget, you know, this year and next year and going forward.
Okay, I understand now.
Milano, I'll ask, we all had, you know, everybody on the committee had their parts of the budget to look at. And we discussed some of them last fall, winter, whatever you want to call it. So am I correct in understanding not counting the schools, but the department budgets are funded at the level service amount that they requested, with the exception of the police is getting one position added. And not talking about schools. Is that correct, that the department budgets are funded at the level service amount they requested?
Correct.
Police and DPW.
DPW, remind me?
Well, because of the snow and ice,
Oh, right.
and then the one-time items that.
Well, that's level service, because it's an expense. So the one-time items would be separate, so the $120,000 for the traffic engineering, so. Yeah,
Okay.
So the level service requests, inclusive of the increase on snow and ice, are all being.
Okay, thank you.
DPW, what was some of the things that had to be sacrificed for snow and ice? Were they just projects that were just moved down?
Yeah, we really just asked them to dial back on their other spending, pause on hiring processes, so we've paused on hiring a little bit to try to push any new hires to like June or July, potential start dates. So they have a broad payment to contractors line that they'll use to come in for projects, materials, expenses, whether that's buying pothole repair stuff. So all those kind of little projects are what gets impacted when we start dialing back in years where the snow and ice budget looks worse than other years. Generally, they operate as normal for the first 5 to 6 months of the year. We reevaluate February, March timeframe and then try to dial back the balance of the year.
Are we getting new accounting software? Are we looking at that?
So we are, I should have included that in the presentation. So we are in the works of analyzing and making a recommendation around a new payroll platform. That would really be our kind of number one priority as it stands right now. In terms of accounting software, there's a lot that goes into that. I'll let you chime in if I get anything wrong here. But we're upgrading components of that. So, for example, our assessors use a Patriot platform that was upgraded last year for collections, QDS. So,
Like billing and collections for taxes.
and utility billing.
Utility billing is the next phase that we haven't done yet. It's the partner we were working with. It's just an upgraded system through that software provider.
The biggest kind of next conversation would be accounts payable, general ledger, and how all those systems talk to each other successfully. It works today, but it's something that we feel we do need to do an upgrade on. We haven't identified the right solution quite yet, or the cost and everything else, but that is where we had kind of prioritized was payroll, and we're moving forward on that and have sufficient funding to do so. And then internal kind of upgrades with the systems we're using currently, and then we have to assess and make a determination on the general ledger and accounts payable platforms.
Does the payroll have budgeting properties to it,
So,
projections? No.
if we set it up right, yes. So the whole philosophy behind it is if we find a solution that works for payroll and human resources and automate that process, that then once we make the determination of what vendor we're gonna go with for that, then we'll start looking at accounting systems, which would include accounts payable, paying the vendor invoices, general ledger, recording all the transactions, which would then have a budgeting module for everything else. So in an ideal world, the payroll system, what we would like it to do, especially for the schools, is to project out the remainder of the year if my staffing stays where it is right now, what does it look like? And why that's important on the schools is because they have high turnover, but also, not high turnover, let me take that back. They get a lot of people that get paid 10 months out of the year and they take a lump sum in June. So like it's tricky projecting out the payroll sometimes. So if you get the right system, set it up right, that can assist with that, that would save their staff a lot of time with the budgeting as well as projections during the year as it's happening. But it doesn't make sense to pick a ledger AP package without knowing payroll's more important. Find that first and then, ledger and payables is pretty straightforward. Don't need anything too fancy.
I'm still thinking about snow and ice and how to help free cash next year. I'm embarrassed to ask, but the free cash that we're rolling over, the 10%, is that in here somewhere, or is that's just not being allocated?
It's correct, because it's not being appropriated, it's not identified in the warrant, other than if it were to be explained in the comments, for example, or in your message, that this is what's happening, but it's
Okay.
not, there's no article that says it's not being appropriated, it's just not being touched.
Okay, so if we wanted to, hypothetically, if we wanted to take some money out of something else and put it to the free cash / snow and ice, we would just reduce the allocation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So I think as we continue with our discussion tonight, are you two staying here?
I am, yep, I'm good.
Okay. What I had been looking at for, I don't mean to cut off conversation, but what I had been looking at for my agenda was talking about and voting on capital, talking about and voting on, not talking about much, hopefully, but voting on schools, and then talking about the stabilization funds, which may be an issue of, you know, we may or may not be making a change for that. So can we move on to the next thing on the agenda, which is capital? Okay.
You can't go anywhere.
Karen, you admit
There's a
Mark
page
Loring
I
is
need him to explain.
Yeah, I think he's your only guest. Do you need me to share something? You do. Sorry, I got the wrong version up.
It's whatever was sent out to the Warrant Committee today. It's just 8 slides.
Second.
Bus comes out, huh?
Okay, let me share my screen. Let me just see exactly what I'm sharing. Am I sharing my screen? Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. Okay, as long as I know that. Okay,
Okay, so the 3 things I'm gonna talk about are the general fund, the enterprise fund, and we'll put it for that, and then what the Article 4 of the warrant looks like. Go on. So I'm sorry it's so small, but this page plus the 2 pages after it are all the things that were requested for 2027. So Nick presented this to the committee as all of the items requested for 2027. You can't cover everything, so you make decisions and defer some to 28. So that's why 27 and 28 are listed here. So, and then the ones on the decisions, and you can kind of jump in here too, when you're making the decisions on what's gonna be this year, what's gonna be next year, some of it has to do with equipment that is so old, it's not even efficient any longer, it needs to be replaced. Some things are, you know, the schools are 20 years old, the town hall had windows, I think it is. So sometimes you have to replace things just because they're worn out, and just like in our homes. So that's the stuff that's highlighted are the ones for 27. And then, as I said, there's 3 pages of this. You can
Tell
just
me
keep, huh?
tell me when to go.
Yes, go ahead. I thought she was doing, yep, just click through. And you can even just go to the next one too. People, you have this in detail, you can see, so stop here. So the number of things that are gonna be, are put forward are the ones in 27, and then the decision of should it be free cash or should it be bonded? And free cash obviously is not free, but it's like a one-time expenditure. Whereas bonding obviously is borrowing and paying over a large number of years. So the free cash, one second, the free cash is 1.2 plus million dollars, and then the bonded in this list here is 3.945 million. And then I'll explain later on why in the warrant that actually is a higher number. We'll kind of go from there. So we can just, the items are up through multiple departments, and so, but those are the decisions that have to be made. This is where I asked Nick to help explain.
Sure, this is just our debt service forecast. So assuming that all the projects recommended to be borrowed are approved by town meeting, what this sheet shows you, about 2/3 of the way down under the row bond finance fiscal 27 recs is assumes we borrow all of those next August and start paying them back all together. So it would be a slight increase in fiscal 28 of about $80,000 and then a larger increase in fiscal 29 when we pay full principal and interest on that new debt. That you can see down below where it says anticipated increase over the prior year. So in fiscal 29, when that debt really hits, we're looking at a net increase of about $46,000 from the prior year forward, despite, a large portion of new debt because there's old debt that's rolling off the books. And then as you can see, each subsequent year, additional debt rolls off. So this is how we try to, bring additional debt on, being aware of what's coming off to continue to invest in our capital infrastructure while also being cognizant of the impact on the budget. So that's just the forecast. So the fiscal 27 line shows you what the debt serving costs of all the projects in this year's capital budget, if they're all approved and voted by town meeting, and if they're all borrowed at the same time, which really happens is sometimes capital project will get delayed or won't get started and finished on time, and maybe we won't borrow it until a year or two later. So that would push out these costs a little bit, but this just assumes everything that's approved gets borrowed and complete all at the same time. And that's what we would anticipate for cost increases over the next 5 years.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
And that sheet is general fund only.
Yes.
Yeah, you said earlier enterprise fund. I don't know what that is.
Sorry?
You said something about an enterprise fund earlier. I don't know what that is.
It's the
It's
water,
page-
sewer,
Yeah, water, sewer,
stormwater,
and
and
stormwater, it's the
and
next slide.
Ah, thank you.
Yes, because this is, I don't wanna say self-supporting, but this comes from fees that people pay
that's
for
the
these
right term,
services.
self-supporting.
Self-supporting, look at that, okay. So on here, there's a number of items that were requested that are not going to be considered in for this year. The stormwater, the street sweeper at $445,000. The current equipment, as I explained before, it's beyond its useful life and needs to be replaced. And then underneath that, you say, this one I did prior authorization but not spent yet. So that's money that was approved previously and they just haven't spent it yet?
So every year, there's usually an article and further back in the warrant, standalone article for stormwater capital. In the last few years, we've appropriated $320,000. They haven't spent it yet,
Okay,
so
that's
we're
what I-
skipping this year.
And then there are two items that are not considered capital items, so they would not be considered on this. And the water and sewer, a couple of things that are going to be put forward will be split between them 50-50. So the VACA truck, if I understood and I remembered from our meeting, the director said that this piece of equipment would be used often. And if we had this new one, it would reduce the need to outsource certain types of excavation work. So between the water and sewer, they both would split the cost, so it would be $345,000 each. And then the same thing with the meter replacement. They're going to go to smart meters, I think. Letters went out to people about the meters, and it's gonna look like the meter that you have, but everything, the technology is improved. You will know real-time usage. So you can make decisions about how you save money in your own house and what your bills may be next year. So that, again, is being split between these two departments. Sure.
Did I hear correctly that we've all been assessed stormwater service fees for the last few years that haven't been expended anywhere?
And no, so the stormwater infrastructure capital, that appropriation is $320,000. So what would happen is that's an authorization to borrow money against the revenue that comes in.
Okay.
So they haven't put together a large capital project to spend that money yet. So rather than continue to give it more appropriation and borrowing, we have a number of projects that need to happen within the system for federal compliance with stormwater regs that are more important, and then we'll use that money. So the stormwater fee that's been assessed that folks have paid, we use that money that goes to work to support the budget. This is a capital appropriation to invest in the capital infrastructure that they haven't needed quite yet, and they don't need this appropriation this year because they already have it on the books if they need to use it.
And
Sure.
if I can just add, none of these items will hit the enterprise budget until we borrow it and the debt service payments are due. So that 320 hasn't hit anybody's bill until we spend the money, borrow it, and then we're paying interest and principal on that debt. Then it factors into the budget, which then lands on all of our bills.
And one thing, now that we're talking about, I'll just add that these are the three rates and fees that we can assess to all property owners, whether you're a charitable institution or not. So Milton Hospital, Curry College, Milton Academy, they all pay water and sewer rates like the rest of us. Stormwater, they all get assessed stormwater fees on their impervious surface area. The town pays into the stormwater fee. So all our town budgets get assessed based on our facilities and our impervious surface area. So these are mechanisms that hit all property owners, unlike those that might be exempt from property.
This is, the last two slides are the article that's being presented. And one of the things on here, I just wanted to, because when I did the capital back here, it was 3.9 million for bonded. And now it says 5.3 million, and that's because of the water, sewer, and stormwater enterprise items that are going to be bonded. So that was added onto here. And then the capital items are the same as they were presented, 1.2 million, for a total amount of 6.596 million. So that, I just wanted to point out, that's why the reason it went up, where it looked like it was only gonna be 3.9. Actually, we're asking for 5.3 million. So that's kind of all. I don't have this, I mean, that's all I have with my slides here.
Can I just add one thing, if you wouldn't mind going to her previous slide with the, I'm sorry, one more with the enterprise funds. Thank you. If you look at water, you'll see the water infrastructure capital plan for 596,700. And then under sewer, you'll see the sewer infrastructure capital plan for $1,150,000. Those are MWRA borrowing programs, and they are listed in standalone articles towards the end of the warrant. So that's the other difference, is you have Article 4, and then you have some standalone borrowing articles towards the back, which when the capital committee looks at this, we usually focus on general fund because we know that that's important to balance the budget. And then we skip over to enterprise funds and go from there.
Thank you.
So if you add it all up, you're gonna have to go to multiple articles that this committee will have to vote on to approve. Not approve.
See you.
Yeah, I just had a question. How do you decide what comes from free cash and what is bonded?
Generally, we try to keep less expensive for equipment that won't last as long under free cash, and then more expensive for things with a longer useful life. That's why we show this useful life under borrowing. Because, if we can avoid the principal and interest payments on a 5-year piece of equipment, we will, just by paying for it out of cash. But at the same time, since we can issue bonds tax exempt, we get very favorable rates. So it does make sense to use borrowing as an opportunity to spread those tax dollars. But the general gist is less expensive and or fewer years of useful life will be treated as pay-as-you-go capital or free cash. More expensive, longer duration would be borrowing.
Okay, I'm looking around. I can't see if anyone has their hand up on Zoom, but we've discussed this item. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Unless somebody else does. I don't know. I just always get sticker shock with some of this stuff, but I have some questions, sir. Well, for one thing, COA, the bus, that comes out now, right? So we have to wait for that.
I would recommend we leave it in because the grant is an 85%, 15% match. So the state will pay 85% of the cost, so it won't be $130,000. The other thing is until the grant agreement has been signed and it's still, so my recommendation would be to leave it in. We will not utilize it, or at least we won't utilize the full portion.
Sorry, where are you saying that?
The COA, the first one, COA passenger, 14
Oh,
passenger
thank
bus,
you.
that's the one we got the grant for.
Thank you.
The, I don't know. Is Andrew here? You might know this. But like school technology, we place smart boards, 188, and then we place network hardware. That's like $540,000 or $550,000. That seems like a lot of money, but I don't know.
It's throughout the entire schools, and they'll go school by school, and that came from the IT director, Bob Pattison, in terms of what his costs are to do an entire replacement for a building.
All the schools?
They go building by building, which one are we looking at, school technology replacement? I can pull up the specific school for network hardware, but it's going through an entire school to replace all of the network hardware in that building that's, I think, 10 years old at this point.
That sounds right.
Oh, the price for sure, but seems low actually.
What's a Vector truck?
It's a larger piece of equipment used for trenching, for water main work, storm drain work, sewer drain work. So it's a large piece of equipment that uses air to assist in trenching and in the renovation projects. It's not something we have today. That would be a new piece of equipment that the town would be purchasing, rather than the rest of these, which are replacements.
Do we know what we'd save by buying it versus renting out?
Yeah, I mean, when we have to bring in an outside contractor, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars to rent a Vector truck on a daily basis. So there are certain projects that we can't do without a Vector truck, which means then we're bringing an outside contractor, and then generally it'll add to the capacity for town staff to just do projects on a case-by-case basis. So I don't have a breakdown of dollars, but the department, as well as the vehicle fleet head, Charlie Colligan, and our next director, Marina, is leaving in June, but they all were aligned on this.
What?
Yes. I didn't know I was breaking that news. Yes, we've been sharing it with staff and everybody internally, so.
So we're saving money, it's like tens of thousands?
It's a cost avoidance. It makes trenching safer and more efficient for our staff, and it should enable them to get more done. So in terms of a dollar cash analysis, I can't do and I won't speak to. I can ask Marina to follow up with you with additional information.
I'd be curious. I mean, if we should reduce the budget by that much too.
Yeah, so she says in the request, one of the comments that's made is that it can help the engineering department with test pits, which is something that the DEP is requiring them to do some additional, and those cost $1,000 to $2,000 each time they do one. She had some metrics at one of the meetings about how many a
Yeah,
year
actually, and
she'd
you
be
can,
looking at.
and I can send you the link. We had a lengthy conversation at Capitol with her and others about it.
Yeah.
So I can share that information and
It's
follow
like,
up.
how much are we saving? My other question would be, the school technology end user devices. What would that be?
That's largely the Chromebooks. It's an annual appropriation to do Chromebook replacement. It's largely Chromebooks, but it would be any kind of device within the school buildings, whether some desktops are aging out. It's primarily the source that they use to replace student devices.
What the students use?
Is there other discussion? So what I'm looking at on the PowerPoint appears to be exactly the same as what's on the warrant. So we've discussed this, we have it in front of us. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'd like to wait, because we just got this until maybe Thursday. I'd like to see what the Vector truck, what we're saving on that. It's 700,000.
Is that gonna affect when we vote?
But yeah,
Well, okay. Brian
In
has.
terms of timing, hey, Jay,
Yes.
my assumption is any savings as a result of buying that truck wouldn't be seen for more than a year. So it wouldn't affect next year's budget, I don't think. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So I personally, I don't think we need the answer to that question for this budget.
but you need to know if it's justified.
Well, the
Good point,
capital
Zach.
committee fully vetted, we spent a lot of time going over this stuff. I mean, did a lot of work. So it was fully vetted.
Yeah, I don't wanna just be a rubber stamp, but the capital, yeah, what Amy just said, the capital committee looked at these.
I'd like to make a motion that we just pass the amendment of the article as it's written.
Okay. Okay. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Casey. Is there more discussion about a motion in front of the body? Okay, Karen, can you do a roll call vote?
Macy? Yes. Elaine?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Brian?
Abstain.
Michael?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yes.
Cecile? Yes. Jay?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Okay.
You got this.
Yeah, don't go too far.
Articles on capital, right?
The next one I would like to put in front of us to presumably vote is the school budget, because we discussed that quite recently. And I'd like to can't find this either. Okay, I'll scroll down. Article 23. So I will share my screen.
Okay. I'll drop on this one for the school budget.
That's fine. That's fine.
Thank you. I'll come back in.
This is the recommendation. This is what I believe Mr. Milano recommended, what I believe the school subcommittee looked at, what we had quite a bit of discussion about last week. I will entertain a motion. As always, once a motion is made, we can discuss it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Article 23 as written.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Is there discussion about Article 23? Hearing none? When you're ready, Karen.
Ready. Macy?
Yes.
Elaine?
Yes.
James Lee?
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Lee Michael?
Yes.
Nick? Cecile? Jay?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Okay. The next one I would like to look at this evening, and I would like to, this may be a short discussion, it may be no discussion at all, but just to be on the safe side, I'd like to invite Mr. Daly from the select board to come join us at the table. And I believe we have Mr. Loring from the school committee on the phone.
Just for TV.
The article I'd like to look at is the stabilization funds. this is what Mr. Milano is proposing, is $675,000 of the stabilization fund, nothing to capital and road. Special education stabilization fund, 500,000, operating budget stabilization fund. Why doesn't that say $1 million?
It includes the tax
Oh, the
levies.
tax levy, thank you.
I had the same.
Okay. One reason I wanted to look at this, by we, I mean myself, Mr. Daly, Ms. Haggerty, members of the school committee, members of the school administration, Milano, Miss Dexter, all discussed this $500,000. And I would say the consensus of the room, not a unanimous consensus, but a broad consensus of the room, was it'd be good to build it in the Special Education Stabilization Fund. Mr. Milano, can you remind us, the 30-second version of what that is, how it works, what it can be used for?
Yes, the Special Education Stabilization Fund can be used for unanticipated special education or special education transportation costs that a district experiences. To withdraw funding from it requires approval of both the school committee and the select board. So it's meant to be, more of a resource for unanticipated costs in a given year, less than a kind of recurring source of funding each fiscal year, if that makes sense. So it's kind of a backstop for those unanticipated costs that might hit a district throughout the year. Not like snow.
So that's different than the special education circuit breaker?
Correct. The circuit breaker account takes grant money from the state for circuit breaker for special education transportation, and that can be used directly by the school department without necessarily coming to a school committee and select board vote. So it's more of a kind of grant fund that they can utilize administratively, just as we can administer our grant funds on the town side.
Did they think, I don't know, if it's okay to ask questions?
Yes, please.
I guess two questions. Is there an anticipation that that will be funded every single year? And is there a planning, other than, unforeseen expenses, is there an expectation of how it might be spent? Do they think it will be spent routinely? Like, some of it might be spent in a given year? Is it really just an extra reserve fund in case, break glass, something? I'm just curious what the expectation of how it will be spent will be.
Sure. I mean, I'd be happy to defer to Mark, but I think what they have expressed, if I'm not speaking out of turn, is the latter. It's more meant to be treated as an emergency reserve kind of backstop when things come up rather than a recurring expense. And we can't commit here today that we will be able to certainly fund it in fiscal 28, but what we can do is in fiscal 28 recommend some appropriation to that fund to be available. If they don't use it in fiscal 27, then it's there in 28 as well.
I will add to that. And I don't think I forwarded this to everyone, after our meeting last Wednesday, at our meeting, they had some sample policies that other towns have, which is sort of mathematical. It's like, well, you look at what you're expecting to spend on special ed out of district or transportation or whatever, then you look at what you are and you subtract those. So other towns have policies that make it a little more rigorous than, oops, we need money. And if I'm recalling correctly, we said that Milton, maybe between now and the day of town meeting, would put together a policy like that.
Yeah, so the Special Education Stabilization Fund came apart, and Nick, you know this history better than any of us, because of the rising costs and the override from last year. Special education funds expenses are a major driver of the school budget, so many towns have this stabilization fund where you keep money aside in case circuit breaker doesn't cover anything, or if you're in the middle of the year and you get a particularly expensive placement for a student, you can go to these funds and not have to wait for the state. The state, I'm not gonna have this perfectly, I'm not in the schools, but the assessment and payments are done in October. And so you could have things that happen after that. So instead of us going to operation or going to town meeting, this sets it up to the schools, and it would be a meeting between the select board and the school committee to discuss what the issue is, and then the funds can be released. So that's really the main focus of what the fund is. This is the first time, this is the second year we've had it. The first year we funded it, but the money was used, I believe it was 700,000, was used as part of the override. So this will be us funding it for it to be used in the case that we set it up for. So it may not be used next year. In the policies, what would also be included is, are we going to fund it year after year? Where we are right now is only this first time fund. Also included in those policies will be perhaps after a number of years, if there is not a cost, and we've seen that special education costs have stabilized in some way, does it roll back into operating? Does it get allocated in a separate place? So the school committee is taking the lead on drafting those policies. We'll be reviewing it, and hopefully we'll have something together before the town meeting for all of those extra details. Mark, did I miss anything?
No, I think y'all are doing a great job of explaining it. I think the only other thing I'd highlight is the consultant report, as we kind of shared, related to kind of its discussion of circuit breaker and building back circuit breaker. In that same section as well, and within that report, it talks about the special ed stabilization fund, establishing one and utilizing kind of free cash as a seed to begin the fund. And then kind of moving forward, not that, free cash allocations would be an annual thing towards it, but rather if the school department itself kind of came under budget at the end of the year, that a lot of places, what they do is then utilize that kind of unused revenue to then put into the special ed stabilization fund in future years. So it's kind of self-funded through the department, but again, seeded with a one-time free cash allocation. And so again, this was, I think, Nick has been a great partner in this as he's heard kind of our desire to rebuild some of those stabilization funds as we shared within the warrant committee presentation. And so identified this kind of early on as a potential avenue. And so we appreciate that partnership and appreciate the select board's support and advocacy through it. But happy to answer any other questions folks have.
I guess I have one more question, which is, what would be the pros and cons of allocating that $500,000 to this new fund versus having it in the operating budget stabilization fund?
I think Jay's gonna handle cons, so I will handle a bit of the pros. One of the main pros for me is that this becomes a conversation point for the select board and school committee. If they're seeing a rise in costs, we have to meet, we have to discuss what those rising costs are before the funds are released. It also, I think of it as a bit of a compromise with the school committee and the select board in the town, in that they are giving up some flexibility where they do not have the complete control over the funds, but the funds are available. If the funds go into operating, I do believe we have to go to town meeting to get approval for those funds to be released, which does not allow the flexibility for the schools to just use it when needed, when they have those rising costs or those placements. And we're not in the schools, so we don't know how quickly those placements happen and how quickly they may need the funds. And when they have it through circuit breaker and other sources, they do have a lot more flexibility to just allocate those funds as needed. So I think it's a big compromise, it's also a conversation point, and it's a way for us to support the schools for what we know is a big rising cost.
And I'll present the other side. As I said, last Wednesday, there was a consensus, but not unanimous, and I was in the minority. Whether we put it to the operating budget stabilization fund or leave it in free cash to help cover snow and ice, which would then lead to more contributions to operating budget stabilization fund next year, maybe. Now that I say it, sounds a little overly complicated. Yeah, we haven't hammered down an operating budget stabilization fund policy, but me and Mr. Milano, working with others, hope to do that before town meeting. But basically the idea is we put $500,000 in operating budget stabilization fund. We'll have, over the course of the next 3 years, spread over 3 years, $500,000 in operating revenue. I will say that putting less in the operating budget stabilization fund, we saw that they are building a healthy reserve in circuit breaker. And so if I sort of mentally put together a special education stabilization fund and circuit breaker, add those together, they're very healthy. So maybe it could be a little less. Take that a little less, put an operating budget stabilization fund, we get a little more in operating revenue every year. And if someone would say, well, you're taking away from the town, we had a budget coordination meeting this morning where the school administration talked about, we need 5.2% every year to maintain level service, and we're probably not gonna get it. Let's get as close as we can to that. Well, if we take $500,000, put in the operating budget stabilization fund, take out $500,000, take out $100-something thousand every year, that's money that will go to the school's operating budget partially every year. It'll be split among everybody. So it makes us more likely to hit a comfortable increase every year for the schools, but less likely to cover an emergency if we have a kid who costs $500,000 program going out of town. So it's a trade-off. I like the flexibility of either not allocating it and having it go to free cash or allocating the operating budget stabilization fund. So that's my view. Mr. Loring and Mr. Daly may have a different view. And I think I also said at last Wednesday's meeting, the warrant committee's not intending to go rogue. We're not intending to go against what the other boards and committees do like in town just for the sake of it. But I think it is worth it.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add.
Hey, we lost your audio. I didn't hear what you just said.
How much?
I still can't hear you.
He's talking.
The audience is lost us.
Our friends at MATV can hear you, and they know you can't hear us.
No, you're already.
It's working now.
If you lean too far back away from the microphone, no one's gonna hear you. So it's just a matter.
There's no microphone.
Where is the microphone?
Green thing right there.
Can someone else who's remote tell us if you can hear us?
I can hear you now, but I couldn't hear you at the same time that Lee Michael couldn't hear you.
Okay. How much did you miss? I don't know if it.
It was your last like two sentences.
Yep.
And brought tears to people's eyes. Sorry you missed it.
The rest of it was prose.
I think I was asking for your input, Mr. Loring. If you care to make some.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it as a group. I think what we generally expressed is like this kind of, again, came from a place where the town administrator and the select board were looking for the school department to utilize more of the circuit breaker reserve account going into next year to build that account more slowly, given those are funds we can expect to continue to receive kind of year over year reimbursements from the state, and therefore could use to offset some recurring operating funds. And so obviously, as we presented to y'all, we did that. We increased it by 400,000. And they're kind of in that discussion, the idea was, well, if y'all increase this, then potentially we can utilize one-time funds to help build the accounts, which I know, Jay has said before is kind of the right way to use one-time funds in terms of the stabilization funds. So that was kind of the genesis of the conversation. Again, I would push back against the idea that our balances are very healthy. I think we've shared with you kind of where our goals are in terms of where we're trying to get the circuit breaker and why. I think we've shared previously of some of the deficits related to special education over the last couple of years that led to some significant challenges with the school budget that were unfortunately impacted other parts of the town. We're in the millions of dollars range. So these are not, having $1 million at the end of this year, and circuit breaker is obviously a much better position than we were in at the start of this year. And so great credit to Katie and John on that, but it's still not a place where we feel incredibly confident. Otherwise we wouldn't continue to have this plan to kind of keep building it back. Certain out of district placements can be in the upwards of, $400, $500, $600,000 for the year for the placement and for transportation. And again, those are things I think we talked about a little bit in our presentation to the warrant committee. So, again, we feel in a better place with circuit breaker. We've thought of this as kind of a belt and suspenders model. I agree with Winston on the point that, the benefit of the special ed stabilization fund is it creates conversation between the entities. So I think all those are points to the positive. As I said in the meeting on Wednesday, I could see us not allocating it to the special ed stabilization fund and doing it elsewhere. And I would just want the boards to all be really clear that in a scenario where there is a, unanticipated special education kind of cost within next fiscal year or the following fiscal year, that this funding then would not be available to the school department to address that. And so it's possible we would need to come to the warrant committee or the select board or other, maybe town meeting to get different allocation from different accounts. Like that's just kind of where it is. And so like if all the boards are really okay with that and we think that's the best path forward, I think we might be able to live with that. We just think the special ed stabilization fund itself is really kind of clear for town meeting, for the future select boards, for future school committees of just in the event of kind of these special ed overages, like we saw kind of over the last couple of years, where do we go? Where do we find the funds? And this is kind of one of those places to do it. And again, I just go back to the report we just received from our consultants, which advocated for this kind of exact thing. Now, whether $500,000 is the exact right amount or, something slightly less, I think I also mentioned we want to, if the boards collectively feel like, hey, a 300, 200 allocation difference is fine, then that's something for discussion. I think, at that meeting, ultimately, both Nick and Amy, who I defer to a lot as to kind of how they look at the long-term finances of the town and where they think things should go. Both of them stated in the meeting that, they felt the full 500,000 should go into the special ed stabilization fund. And so that's, I think, a school department or the members at least there generally kind of agreed with that. And that's where we landed.
For a procedure note, I don't know if there's going to be any appetite on the warrant committee to amend this. But what I would like is for a motion and a second for what's in front of us. And then if there is the appetite to amend it, then someone can choose to or not make that amendment. That amendment can be voted up or down. So for process-wise, I think it'd be great if someone made a motion for this as it stands. And then if someone wants to amend it, they can.
Okay. I'll move to approve the article as it's written.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay, great. We have a motion, we have a second, we have a motion in front of us. Now we can discuss the motion in front of us, including but not limited to, I'm really not trying to twist anyone's arms. If there's a desire to make an amendment, you can, otherwise we'll vote on this as is shown.
I guess I'm inclined to support it, but I don't recall discussing this with the school department when they made their budget presentation last week. I thought they did a great job talking about the circuit breaker and describing that. And I feel disappointed that this wasn't covered as part of that conversation because they're so interconnected and closely related. So I'm a little disappointed about that from a full transparency angle of it. And I think the way it's been described tonight makes a lot of sense and is really rationed out. But I do wish there was analysis that would support the policy of expectations of how it might get spent over time. There's been a lot of talk about how we've been over budget in special education. I would imagine there could be some forecasting of what those unexpected surprises. I know it's going to be, have a lot of variance from year to year, but I feel like there should be able to come to some forecast on that to understand how it could get expended in the future and what the expectation for future funding requests for that could be in the future as well. So I feel like it's kind of incomplete and maybe not fully transparent as it could have been in discussions with the circuit breaker. But I think the concept of it makes a lot of sense, the way it was described and the purpose for it.
Well, I will take partial, if not all, responsibility for the fact that this didn't come up last Tuesday. You make a very good point.
Can I, to that point, I had the same question, but like, where did the 500 come from? Like, was that some analysis behind that? That's my question. Is there a variance normally of 500,000? I don't know.
I mean, I'll defer to Mr. Milano, but I think that's what we had in free cash. We had X amount of free cash.
So
How do we come up with 500?
No magic formula. It was, as we were assessing potential use, it was really driven by some of the conversations that the schools had been having about some of their targets around circuit breaker funding, but there's no real rhyme or reason to the figure. I won't claim that there was one.
So it doesn't go up, it hasn't like jumped 400,000 one year or down?
It's been zero. We only just
I mean,
accepted this
special-
provision.
No, but the special ed costs.
Oh, those.
You know, do those jump that much? That's the question. What do that?
They can, and they did, and I'm not sure if the school committee showed it in their presentation, but they had for the last 10 years, the rise in special education funds. I think from 2020 on, it was particularly high. There was a change at the state in the laws and the vendors and the costs, so transportation's been a driver, and I think right now, we don't have, I think it's a bit until the summer until we really know what the amount is going to be for the next year. It is expected to continue to rise.
What the state's gonna hit you with?
Just-
I'm sorry, what the state's gonna hit you with?
Not necessarily the state, the vendors, the actual costs, the cost of tuition and transportation. The state has,
Preferred vendors.
yeah, the state has committed to raising the funding amounts, but we won't know that until they actually do it.
Don't want to get too far off track, but I will share something that I have from the state.
Another point, just to add to why it may not have been in the school committee's presentation, is the schools don't factor in that 500,000 into their budget. So that's a separate fund that's outside, so that may be the reason that it was not.
So when we look at, this is from state information, total eligible expenses. An eligible expense, and Mr. Loring can correct me, but it's basically, if you have a kid and that kid's expenses are more than $50,000 a year, this is the circuit breaker calculation, then they're part of that. So this going between 4.5 million up to 8 million, down to 7.8 million. I think that's all the kids who are above $50,000. Add those all up. And then this is the circuit breaker calculation. This is what we don't get reimbursed for. This is what we do get reimbursed for. And this is 70 to 75% of that. Sorry, the people at home can't see my hand gestures.
Who created this chart? Was this from you?
I did.
Oh, it's from you. Where is the data from?
The data is from the state, so I have,
DESI?
circuit breaker.
Shouldn't that come from the school though?
For every town, for every year.
Data come from the schools?
They have to report it to the state. The state pulls it all together for every district in Massachusetts on an annual basis.
Are you saying, should I not be sharing?
No, I'm just curious, I'm just curious,
Yeah, I don't love sharing sort of unvetted, unchecked numbers, but I mean, this gross number is, I don't think I could have messed that up. And, you can see it went from 5.7 to $8.1 million. That was the year that all hell broke loose. Other years it went down, other years it popped around, so.
It's a pretty big range.
Yeah, it is a big range. Sort of.
That's all special ed, right?
Yes.
Hey, Jay,
Yes.
you got two hands up. Mark was first.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. Just to comment on two things. The reason we didn't bring this up in the budget presentation was a bit, I think what was referenced is just, this is not our warrant article. So the free cash allocation is not an article coming from the schools. It is coming from the town administrator and the select board. And again, we're appreciative of the support, but that's one of the reasons. And we, as was said, kind of built our budget with the essentially the assumption that we weren't gonna get anything within free cash, because it's still, even at that time, wasn't clear exactly where this conversation was gonna land, because we didn't have them, we presented to you on Tuesday, and then we had kind of the joint meeting about the 500,000 on Wednesday. So everything we did around kind of our projections was assuming, let's just assume we don't get it, because there was some kind of back and forth disagreement on exactly how to utilize this 500,000, and is this the right way? And so we decided that, again, given it was not our warrant article and there was not kind of consensus at that point about exactly what's going to happen to this, we didn't bring it up in the kind of school budget presentation, which was the point of topic last Tuesday. So certainly apologize if anybody felt like we should have raised it or discussed it there, but that was the reasoning behind not doing it. And then, yeah, again, the general idea is just special ed costs are really unpredictable, very expensive at times. And, when we set the budget in March, things change in April, May, June, all the way through kind of the following year. And so there have been times, years in recent past in Milton, where those changes really negatively impacted not just the school department budget, but also had impacts on kind of the broader town budget. And so, again, as we shared kind of within the presentation of the warrant committee, we are thinking first and foremost of how are we being good financial stewards? How are we making sure we're creating budget sustainability and creating these places where we can accommodate for what are, unknown variables, but it is a known unknown. We know that special education can be very costly and unpredictable, and we need to create mechanisms for anticipating those unknowns to pop up. And so circuit breaker is the primary way in which we are doing that. That was our kind of preferred avenue. There's no way for the town to directly allocate funds into the circuit breaker. They would need to kind of put that within the school operating budget. We would just draw down on it. And so it was determined that was not kind of a viable path. So the special ed stabilization fund was kind of the next viable path that again, most of the people in that conversation last Wednesday kind of seemed to agree upon.
Mark, you created a new question with that update from me. Can you just verify the presentation that you made last week? Nothing in there, because you said you didn't factor in this 500,000 because you weren't sure what was going to happen. Nothing in that appropriation request changes as a result of what we do or don't do with this 500,000. Is that right?
Correct. Nothing changes.
Okay. Thank you. Jay, my question was really for you, and that is, if you had your druthers, where would you put a breakdown of that $500,000 elsewhere in the budget?
Speaking as only 1/15 of the warrant committee.
Yeah, that's why I used your name.
Yep. I think I'd like to not allocate it and have it go straight to free cash, which will help with the snow and ice deficit.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just procedurally, to kind of spell that out a little bit more, is, we'll have more information about the snow and ice deficit once we close the books. We'll have a fall town meeting, so in theory, an appropriation at fall town meeting could put money, say if the appropriation of sped stabilization fund was 0, it could be made at that point to put some into sped stabilization and some to the snow and ice deficit. So because it's free cash, we would try to get it certified ASAP at the end of the year. All options remain on the table for a fall town meeting. I just want to make sure all the members were aware of that as a process kind of point. So you weren't making a decision thinking you had to decide right here and right now.
I hear what you're saying. I think I'd rather make a decision.
Understood. Yeah, I just wanted to share that.
I hate to be too wishy-washy, but this is one where I'd like to, I've given my opinion, but I'd like to hear the wisdom of the warrant committee. Because I've been sort of neck deep in this for 3 months, and y'all haven't. And that's why I want your fresh opinions.
Jay, one more thing. It sounds like there were good discussions between the school and the town administrator and the select board. it stood out to me that on that list that was cited earlier about folks who agreed for this money was, I wish the warrant committee was on that list too. I really want to be going into town meeting as a united front on most of these big things, to try and repair some of the hard feelings that exist. And so I would just ask that folks try hard to come together on decisions like this, because I think we probably should have been able to reach an agreement prior to today's meeting about, consensus on where this $500,000 should go. That said, Jay, I don't feel like we're gonna reallocate this money today. I don't feel like the support is there for that. And I would choose to vote it the way it is.
Yeah, you're right, Lee Michael. One problem is, there are, out of 5 select board members, there are 2 that are on the finance committee. Out of 6 school committee members, there are 3 that are on the finance committee. In theory, all 15 of us are interested in the town budget, so I've struggled a little bit. I mean, I guess the answer is we could have discussed this at a warrant committee meeting, period. But that's what I've struggled a little bit, was when everybody's coming together, how is the warrant committee fairly represented? I don't know the answer.
I'm sorry.
Okay, also, I'll amend what I said a few seconds ago. I would only want to change this if the representative of the select board and the representative of the school committee who are here gave an informal okay. It's not worth a town meeting floor fight, committee versus committee, over we're going to save money, where are we going to save it? Brian, you're recognized.
I was just gonna agree with you. I do think, you're off at least 1.2 million on snow this year. You were off 800,000 last year, I think. Like, it's under budget. We know it is. So I think this, you don't know that that's under budgeted. It might be, but you don't really know. So I would agree with Jay that that would be a better place to put it. If there's consensus on that, I'd certainly go forward with that. Makes sense to me.
You could make a motion and test whether or not there's consensus.
Yeah, I mean, we have a motion on the floor. You can make a motion to amend.
Okay, I'll make a motion to amend this, to put this
Okay.
in, to take this and put it in the.
Part or all?
Well, I'd say, that's a good question. All.
So this all goes into the operating budget stabilization fund?
No, I think
It's
you
into the
want to
snow budget.
free cash. You want to go to free cash. So
Okay.
So your amendment is to take the 500,000, turn it to 0, which would effectively leave an additional 500,000 not allocated.
Right, and I do think we should change the budget on the snow.
Well,
But
that's
that's a separate question.
Okay. We have a motion in front of us. Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh,
What's that?
well, I mean, okay.
Yeah, well.
Okay, we have a second.
Yeah, we should have.
I would like to turn to our 2 guests from the select board and the school committee to briefly tell us what they think of this. Mr. Daly.
So if I hear right, what would happen is this would, 500,000 would go to 0, would just be left unallocated to be appropriated at a future town meeting. Presumably to town meeting, to snow and ice, but not necessarily.
I'm not presuming that. I'm presuming it would go straight to free cash.
With specifically that we want it to go to snow and ice?
Oh, no.
Or is that dependent on?
I don't-
No, it could be used for snow and ice, or it could be used for special
No.
education. Right.
Yeah, I don't think we can earmark.
So what'll happen is it'll close out, contribute to the free cash certificate. I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page. It'll close out, it'll be contributed to the free cash certification. Say we have $3 million in free cash in October. $500,000 of that will be from this. For anything to happen with it, it would need to be voted and appropriated by town meeting anyway at a future town meeting, just so everybody's aware.
Okay.
Mr. Daly, can I hear your thoughts on this?
I may need a little bit more time with this. I would not want to change this from schools, being as this is where we started with our initial budget conversation, was having this $500,000 in the special education budget for what was, when we started through the override in this year, what was one of our major drivers of cost and expense. Was to back from that. I understand that we now have this really bad winter and the snow and ice costs. I think we have more time with that. Mr. Milano has not flagged that as something that is, absolutely the most important thing. So I think we do have time to fund snow and ice, and I would like the school budget to be finished, this allocation in this fund to be funded, so that we can move forward with the schools. That would be my preference.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Mr. Loring, we heard some of your opinions earlier, but would you like to say anything now?
Yeah, I'll first couch this in that I'm, again, just one member of a six-person board, and so we haven't obviously taken a vote on this or anything like that. So I hesitate in these moments to speak too much just because of that. I don't want this kind of be mistaken as the voice of the school committee. I will echo the sentiment that Lee Michael said earlier and that others did around just the value of approaching town meeting as kind of united three boards. I think that's really important. Again, this is not originally our warrant article. It's a warrant article from the town administrator and the select board in order to support the schools, which we really appreciate. I know, when John has talked to y'all before, when we were there last week, really flagged kind of how we approached the start of this year with concerns around the ability to address kind of unforeseen high costs, especially as it relates to special ed. So I know that is kind of why we think this would be a positive allocation, and it's aligned to what the report from our consultants kind of advocated for as well. I defer a lot to, I don't know enough about the snow and ice and our ways in which we can close it. I totally agree with the warrant committee members' pieces that that's obviously a concerning deficit. It's something that at some point we will need to close. But in terms of if this $500,000 of free cash is necessary to do that, I don't know from my seat. I would defer to Nick and Amy on the ways in which they are, thinking there are reasonable ways to do that don't hurt the town long term. But again, if this is a place where, the warrant committee really has significant concerns and would like to kind of delay this vote until by putting this to free cash and having it kind of come up in the fall, either some or all of it, then, I think that's probably something the school department can live with, given we did make a decision, assuming that this was kind of unclear, and we still feel good about kind of how we are building up our circuit breaker over time. I do think it just puts even more emphasis on our need to kind of utilize the circuit breaker account, build that up to kind of a healthy level if we are not allocating anything kind of once again to this special ed stabilization fund. Because as I said, that just means there's kind of one less lever to use
Mr. Loring?
in the event of unexpected costs.
Loring?
Yep.
I took from Mr. Daly that he was opposed to this amendment. Can you summarize where you're standing?
Again, I don't want to speak for the full school committee. In general, I would, the schools would appreciate having these funds in order to protect against special ed costs. However, again, this is not our warrant article. I would defer to Nick and Amy, and then, the judgment of the warrant committee as a whole, as it relates to kind of a free cash allocation.
Thank you.
All right.
Is there discussion among the warrant committee about this amendment?
So, I guess what I'm hearing then is that if we were to vote for this amendment, then they'd be losing the flexibility to use this for special education without a special vote of town meeting, right? Just to summarize.
Right.
Is that right?
It sounds to me that the need for special education is more prominent than snow and ice at this point. Because our winter's over, right? It's hopefully.
It's never coming back.
It's coming back.
Snow today.
I know. There's no plowing involved or salting. So that's what I gather. Not to put words in your mouth, that the need is greater here and more immediate than it is for snow and ice. Am I correct in that?
I'm not gonna speak for Ms. Milano or Ms. Dexter.
Just from you.
Just for me.
Yes.
And as one member of the select board, I believe so. I think in our discussions on snow and ice, which we will be having more, that we have a sort of a longer road on funding that.
Okay.
So I would like this to stay as is, to give the schools flexibility to move forward.
And am I correct in that this deficit with snow and ice can be discussed in the fall town meeting?
Correct. So, yeah, the first step will be existing appropriations in fiscal '26 that this committee will have to approve prior to June 30th. then fall town meeting. And then the third option I mentioned is related to when we set the tax rate and potential revenue sources then. So there are a few options. It is a big number. I don't wanna, I was just asking Amy if it's coming off like I'm not worried at all about this $1.5 million, because I don't want that to be the concern. All I wanted to reiterate is, as you say, there are a few different pathways and a few different options. And we'll have more information in a few months, particularly around the federal funding, A, and then B, how much we can absorb within this budget. That then determines what other resources do we truly need beyond those two.
Is there further discussion about this amendment? So we're gonna have a vote. To be clear, if you vote yes on the amendment, that means you want to reduce this $500,000 to zero, which will de facto make it go to free cash. If you vote no on this amendment, you're saying you want to keep this as it is shown. Does everyone understand how we're voting? Okay. Karen, can you do a roll call vote?
Macy,
No, as to the amendment.
Elaine,
No.
James Lee,
No.
Lorraine,
No.
Larry,
No.
Brian,
Yes.
Lee Michael,
No.
Nick,
No.
Cecile, Jay.
Abstain.
Motion does not carry.
Okay. So we're back to the main motion, which is as presented. Is there further discussion? I think we've discussed it pretty well. Further sorry.
No, I was just
Oh,
going.
you're actually sneezing.
I
Okay.
was going, no, I wasn't giving you a signal.
Can we add qualifications? Like, I would like, as I said before, I'm supportive of it. I think it seems really well reasoned. And respectfully, I stand by, I think it was, that transparency builds trust. And the fact that even though it wasn't the school department's warrant item, they knew that this was being discussed broadly and in this really special, I don't mean that appropriately, but, in this really important topic, they kind of left out this important discussion topic.
I'll add to that, again, taking on the responsibility. We met Tuesday.
Yeah, no, I'm not trying
I do want to add, we met Tuesday, and then they were saying, okay, when can all of us, me, Mr. Haley, talk about this $500,000? And they even said, can we do that at your Tuesday night meeting? And I said, no, please, that Tuesday night meeting is going to be full enough. Please do not add that. So it's even more on me than I previously said it was.
But I just think that's good. I appreciate that. And I just think it would be important to get some sort of understanding of future funding and expectations of spending for future allocations. And if there's a way to attach that to this, that would be great, but at least, to have that noted for next year.
Well, again, I think.
It's just something we need to keep in the back of our minds.
Between now and town meeting, I hope there's an adoption of a policy, or at least a proposal of adoption of policy. I see your hand marked, just a second. That, we're looking at these other towns that say, plug this formula into this thing and you get out this number that is what's gonna come out of this fund, so. Yeah, I don't love it if it's just, well, anytime there's special ed, you allocate money. Mr. Loring?
Yeah, just echo that sentiment that has been discussed at the school committee level and with Winston and Megan at the select board level. We totally agree. Wednesday, we have our weekly finance meeting, and on the agenda is special ed stabilization policy, trying to create a first draft to then send over to the select board for their review and approval, because it needs to be a joint policy, but also happy to share any draft with this board as well and get feedback. So yeah, I agree with all those points.
Mr. Tangney, would you like to work on this policy with these people?
I can if people need me to, but I don't need to.
Well, we'll put a pin in that. In the meantime, we have a motion in front of us. A motion, a second. Is there more discussion? Okay, Karen, can you do a vote?
Macy,
Yes, as to Article 27.
Yes, I'm sorry. Article 27 as originally proposed, is what we're voting on. Voted yes?
Elaine,
Yes.
James Lee,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Lee Michael,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Cecile. Yes. Jay,
Abstain.
motion carries.
Okay, so I am going to lay out where I think we stand. There are, give or take, 30 articles that we have not voted on. Most of them are budget articles. I will put a call out, I will ask every warrant committee member who is here now for any budget article that you are the expert on, or even any budget article that you weren't the expert on. Would you like to discuss it now? That's very vague. So then our options in front of us. We can, yeah, it is 9:18. We can do some or all of these tonight as roll call votes. Another option is on the agenda is a Thursday night meeting, which is in person only. The reason it is in person only is if we're in person only, they're not gonna be roll call votes. They're gonna be show of hand votes, say aye. It's gonna go a lot quicker than roll call votes. So, is the consensus of the room, do we want to stay and grind some or all of these out? Or do we want to put it off till Thursday?
I think we're putting it off till Thursday.
Okay, I mean, some people, I can see either.
I was gonna say my vote would be, let's do 5 tonight, but if people really don't want to, we don't have to.
I've been up since 4:30.
Okay, people are, yes, Mr. Milano. you
A
have-
parliamentary suggestion. You may be able to treat it almost like a consent agenda where somebody moves to recommend articles numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I don't know if that's perfect Robert's rules, but I think for the purposes of the warrant committee, it might work.
I appreciate the suggestion, but I want to at least look at every single one and vote on every single one. I'm sorry, but I do feel.
I love the consent agenda, but it always makes me a
Good,
little
thanks.
uncomfortable ever since they adopted it, you know? It's like stuff like that. You know, we were just discussing the capital projects.
So let's decide, are we gonna adjourn or are we gonna do a few budgets?
Discussion. And then when it became-
The people in the room certainly are having the adjourned feeling. Okay, can I have a commitment? We need 8 people for a quorum. I will be there. Will 7 other people be there in person in the basement of Town Hall? I'm seeing hands.
Does it have to be
I can be there, Jay.
Okay. I'm seeing 6 other people at least. I think we're good. Not Macy. James Lee raised his hand. I count, okay. I'm writing your names in blood on a piece of paper. You will be there in the Town Hall basement, 7 PM Thursday. I'm thinking less than an hour.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay.
Second.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
You know what would be a bad thing, Jay?
Go
I
ahead.
should have said this before we ended. Why not have it start at 6 o'clock or something, so it's not so late?
Well, I mean, I
You know,
don't
is
know
it
what's
too
better
late
for
for
people.
that?
People have kids, people